David leased a high-rise apartment, financed a $70,000 pickup, and swiped credit cards like free money. He looked like he was winning. Lucas shared a cramped apartment, drove a 15-year-old Toyota, and silently funneled every bonus into a single, boring target. $10,000 in cash. David mocked Lucas for moving too slow. Then the layoffs hit. David was cut. Within 45 days, he missed rent, the truck was repossessed, and his credit score collapsed. Lucas was also laid off, but he didn't even flinch. He didn't call his parents, didn't touch a credit card. That $10,000 acted like a psychological kill switch that erased panic. He took a 4-month sabbatical, upskilled, and landed a 35% higher salary. The difference? Lucas had crossed the zero panic threshold, a hidden $10,000 line that rewires the brain and makes financial catastrophe almost mathematically impossible. This is not about saving. This is about transitioning to a completely different financial operating system. And exactly how that system works is what matters now. The zero panic threshold is the specific moment an individual holds $10,000 in true liquid cash. Not retirement accounts, not stock portfolios, but accessible, no penalty, ready to deploy capital. Behavioral economists have labeled this the point where scarcity mindset deactivates. Below $10,000, the brain operates in a high cortisol, short-term survival loop. Above it, the brain shifts into long-term optimization. This is not motivational fluff, it is a neurological fact. When liquidity reaches 5 digits, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning and impulse control, stops getting hijacked by the amygdala's fear signals. A person with $10,000 in cash simply makes better decisions. Banks, lenders, and the entire consumer credit apparatus depend on people never reaching this line. A customer who holds $10,000 in cash pays almost zero overdraft fees, zero late payment penalties, and drastically reduced credit card interest. They become unprofitable. That is why no marketing campaign ever encourages it. Below $10,000, every single financial decision is made on a knife's edge. A $400 car repair becomes a crisis that cascades into payday loans. A job loss becomes a clock ticking toward eviction. This state is called the survival trap. Here, high-interest debt is not a choice, it is a structural inevitability. Consider two identical individuals facing a $2,000 emergency. The one with $1,200 in savings covers $1,200 and puts $800 on a 29% credit card. That $800 compounds, carries over, and within 6 months becomes $1,200. The other individual crosses the threshold with $10,000 sitting in a separate account. The $2,000 emergency is a non-event. No interest, no stress, no degradation of future cash flow. But the trap is even deeper. The sub-$10,000 individual also suffers from what researchers call cognitive bandwidth tax. Their mental processing power is consumed by survival arithmetic. They cannot spot income opportunities, negotiate aggressively, or invest in skills. They are too busy fighting fires. The $10,000 threshold extinguishes those fires permanently. When savings hit exactly $10,000, a psychological flip occurs. The individual's internal narrative changes from "how do I survive this month" to "how do I optimize the next 90 days?" This is why Lucas could take a sabbatical and David could not. David had no time. No time means accepting the first job offer no matter how low because the rent is due. Lucas had a 6-month runway. That runway allowed him to reject lowball offers and negotiate from strength. The 10,000 line also eliminates what behavioral finance calls myopic loss aversion, the irrational fear of short-term losses that causes people to sell assets at the bottom or avoid any risk altogether. A person with a 10K buffer can watch their stock portfolio drop 20%. The sub-10K individual panics, sells, and locks in permanent losses. That single behavioral difference compounds into a 7-figure wealth gap over a lifetime. Crossing the threshold instantly unlocks 3 distinct weapons. First, the cash unlock. A $10,000 reserve allows an individual to pay in full upfront, negotiating discounts of 10%. A 10K cushion walks into a dealership, a contractor negotiation, or a medical bill with the ultimate power, the ability to say no. Sellers smell desperation. The 10K erases that sense. Second, the credit unlock. Ironically, holding $10,000 in cash makes credit cheaper and more available. Banks and lenders price risk algorithmically. A borrower with a thin liquidity file gets a higher interest rate, a lower limit, and worse terms. A borrower with a $10,000 cash buffer plus a 750 credit score gets premium rates. Then they leverage those premium rates to acquire assets while their cash remains untouched. The 10K becomes a loss leader that unlocks cheap leverage. Third, the courage unlock. This is the most undervalued. A financial buffer eliminates the job lock that traps high-income employees in toxic environments. When quitting means a 3-month paycheck gap, the individual stays, burns out, and underperforms. With $10,000, they can leave, rest, reskill, or start a side business. The data is brutal. Job switchers who negotiate from a non-desperate position secure 18% higher pay. The 10K pays for itself in a single career move. The largest banks earn a disproportionate share of profits from customers who hover between $0 and $5,000. Overdraft fees, maintenance fees, and penalty interest. A customer base stuck below the $10,000 threshold generates recurring, high-margin revenue. Algorithms are designed to offer 0 APR teaser cards, buy now, pay later schemes, and flexible credit exactly when a user's balance is low, keeping them just solvent enough to keep paying interest, but never solvent enough to escape. The bait is lifestyle. The trap is the absence of a cash buffer. Crossing the 10,000 line makes an individual fee immune. They never pay a cent in interest they didn't plan to make. They float themselves. This is why the financial media pushes narratives that cash is trash, that hoarding cash makes you poor. The truth, cash under 10,000 makes the bank rich. Cash above 10,000 makes the consumer free. The strategy to hit 10,000 is brutally simple. First, a person must create an entirely separate, hard-to-access savings account, ideally at a different bank. The psychological friction of logging into a second institution stops impulse transfers. Second, income must be split automatically, a direct deposit of 20% into the account until the 10K target is hit. No exceptions. The math on a $60,000 income saving $1,000 a month hits $10,000 in under a year. At $70,000, with aggressive spending cuts, the timeline shrinks to 6 months. The moment the balance ticks over to $10,000, the individual locks the account down. It becomes a monument, not a piggy bank. Once the threshold is crossed, something unexpected happens. The speed of wealth accumulation accelerates. The individual never pays financial penalties again. They invest with unshakable discipline because no emergency forces a liquidation. They take career risks with asymmetric upside. They start businesses during recessions when competitors are paralyzed. The 10,000 is not the goal. It is the entry ticket to a game where the odds are permanently tilted in their favor. From this point, every additional dollar saved becomes a missile aimed at financial independence, not a lifeboat for the next crisis. The person flips from prey to predator in the economic food chain. The greatest illusion sold to the masses is that wealth comes from income, from stock picks, from crypto plays. None of that is true without a base layer. Wealth comes from the removal of fragility. The 10,000 threshold removes fragility. It converts a life of constant reaction into a life of strategic deployment. Those above it walk through the same economy but experience a completely different reality. The bank sees them as a loss leader. The car dealership sees them as a cash buyer. Employers see them as a flight risk. That is power. And it all starts when a person stops optimizing for image and starts defending a single line on a bank statement. The line is 10,000. Everything changes after that.